If you do not know the name Trendon Watford, it is time to begin getting familiar. The free agent acquisition is shaping up to the exact missing piece that this Sixers team needed, filling the void at the power forward position that has been so desperately missing for several years, and proving a little reminder of a former standout Sixer himself. I do want to reflect on why Trendon Watford was such an X factor, such a difference maker in the victory over the Toronto Raptors last night. His first career triple-double notch, in which he took on a completely different offensive role than what we've seen from him to this point. That I was a guy that was excited about the Trendon Watford signing when it happened and did not imagine that it could look this good this soon. But to dive right into things here, do want to start off with his stat line last night of 20 points, a career high 17 rebounds, a career high 10 assists, shot 9 of 10 from the field there, his first career triple-double, that he joins Nikola Jokic, Josh Giddey, and Russell Westbrook as the only players to record 20 points, 15 rebounds, and 10 assists in a game this season. Watford got his first start with the Sixers last night, filling into the power forward slot, and I have a feeling that he's not going anywhere anytime soon. Reflect on what he's brought to the table across this year, that he's playing 22.3 minutes per game, averaging 10.3 points, 6.2 rebounds, 4.8 assists per game, shooting 57.1% from beyond the three-point line, 63.9% from the floor. Of course, those numbers are going to go down to an extent, but the 25-year-old is proving that he belongs and is worthy of a notable role on this Sixers team. To lay out a couple additional stats here that I did want to pull up, that across the 3 games that he's played over 20 minutes this year, posting stat lines of 16 points, 9 rebounds, and 7 assists with an 85% true shooting, 16 points, 6 assists, and 2 steals with 74% true shooting, and then last night, 20 points, 17 rebounds, and 10 assists with an 82% true shooting, all while defending 1 through 5, a value signing of the offseason. It can contextualize that a little further, that Trenton Watford is now averaging 7.7 assists per game in games where he's playing at least 20 minutes. Now, speaking of that former Sixer that he did remind me a little bit of last night, that I sent a tweet out during the game that Trendon Watford is hooper-pilled Ben Simmons. And what happened following the game is Joel Embiid himself chimed in on the situation, saying on Watford, quote, "Reminded me of Ben Simmons tonight. We missed those. Triple-double, doing everything. That was good." I do love the straight face from Embiid there. I know that the Ben Simmons chapter ended as poorly as it possibly could. But let's not forget that the valuable role that Simmons did play on this Sixers team and why this team really reached its defensive peak while having him part of it. Not only was it his perimeter defense, which he was excellent at in his peak, but it was the ability to get rebounds, push the break, and play make for others at a rate that Trenton Watford shares very similar skill sets. And by the way, Watford, not a guy that's afraid to shoot it. That historically throughout his career, he has not been a great three-point shooter to this point, but he is willing, and he's hitting at a high rate so far this season. I do hope that continues, and he's making the decision-making for these rosters or for these lineups incredibly difficult on Nick Nurse, which is a great problem to have as a team. Now, I stood up here at the offseason and said my prediction would be Trenton Watford would be the guy that filled that starting power forward job when push came to shove this season. I still sort of feel like that, even though the conversation has got a bit more difficult. I don't know how you can bench a guy like Kelly Oubre Jr. when a guy like Paul George comes back. Looking at the production that Oubre has brought to the table, 21.3 points per game, 3.3 rebounds, 1.3 assists, 1.3 steals, 1.3 blocks on 54% field goal percentage across his past 4 games, still logging the 4th highest minutes in the entire NBA. Oubre has been incredible in his role. A guy like Jared McCain was available last night and did not even see the floor. Now, I do have an issue with that individually here. I'm going to give Nick Nurse a little bit of the benefit of the doubt here, that I know he's still on a minutes limit, and that's not the easiest way to inject things. And if the logic was that Joel Embiid and Jared McCain can't each play back-to-backs, that they're both going to be out for one half of those, and it's better to split them, I can live with that. But I do want to note here that I think Jared McCain needs to be a notable part of the Sixers team. It doesn't have to be in the starting lineup. He can be an off-the-bench guy, absolutely, and he is still scaling himself back up, catching up to the NBA pace at a rapid rate at a midseason level, which is not the easiest thing to do. But his skill set is still necessary on this team, so do not just toss him to the side in the way I thought it sort of came off last night. But once again, giving him the benefit of the doubt, it was just going to be his second game back, and I do understand the logic of splitting up Embiid and McCain on the back-to-backs there. But nonetheless, to put that to the side, this also circles back to why Trendon Watford is so necessary to this Sixers team. That I do think legitimately you can make a pretty convincing case right now that he's the best overall playmaker on this Sixers team. I don't mean that as a diss on Tyrese Maxey. I don't mean that a diss on VJ Edgecombe or any name that you want to throw at me in this. But what is so impressive about Watford is the way that he can just instinctually feel the game, find cutters, push the break, dribble, and open up a passing lane by taking a defender in another direction here. There's some pretty advanced stuff that he just has a savvy for and a real instinct for. Like, these are not plays that are drawn up. These are not him following directions. He's just, as Nick Nurse pointed out post game, what you would call a hooper. That's who Trendon Watford is. And the reason that I think that is so important to this Sixers team is we've talked about there is not a true point guard on this Sixers roster. I think my dream offense and what we're beginning to see take place and take form here is with all these guards moving off ball and playing through a hub of a big man. Now, I've talked about Joel Embiid filling those shoes and taking on those responsibilities all year. If Trendon Watford can be the guy and has more of a playmaking savvy, that absolutely still works. And we saw it on full display yesterday with these assists, the 10 assists that he did generate, so many of them coming off backdoor cuts from guys like Tyrese Maxey and VJ Edgecombe. The dribble handoffs between directly Maxey and Watford there. There's some awesome things that you can do with this, and I do think that that's how this offense can reach its peak. If you have a guy like Watford that can thread the needle, can deliver a high-level pass to guys that are making cuts, that are moving off ball, that is as close to impossible to guard as you will find in the NBA. That, once again, to compare this a little bit to the Golden State Warriors, I know that the Steph Curry shooting is all that steals the headlines there. The three-point production, him pulling up from deep, but when you really watch that offense, what is so fascinating to me is all the motion, the way that Curry is nonstop moving, the way that there are all these options, these interchangeable parts. And a key part of that is Draymond Green being the guy that's the lead decision maker in the half court at such a high rate. That's a skill set I think Trendon Watford is very clearly warming up to, and I think can fill that role for this Sixers team. And this is not to dismiss the other ways that they're going to have to play stylistically. Of course, they're going to have to play through Joel Embiid, who once again continues to get better. To dive into a little bit more of the box score from last night's game, I do think it was a complete team performance that does deserve praise here. Joel Embiid in 26 minutes of play, 29 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, shot 10 of 16 from the field at 62.5% there. Of course, we highlighted Watford, who's a plus 12 in the victory as well. Kelly Oubre Jr. with 19 points, 4 rebounds, and efficient. 8 for 15 from the field, only 1 of 6 from 3, but my hat tip to Kelly, which I think's been on full display, is he's really cut like bad shots out of his diet. That I think one of the clearest frustrations with him is every once in a while you get that Kelly Oubre shot where you're just like, didn't really love that one. And he did have one three-pointer that does pop to mind, and it's like probably did not need that last night. But in general, in the wider scale of the season, I think his shot selection has been miles better than has been the case for most of his career. And that's a huge part why he's playing such a winning brand of basketball this season. Tyrese Maxey had 31 points, 7 assists, and 4 rebounds there. Also had 2 blocks and like a pretty loud block at the rim too, as far as getting up there and preventing it. I forget who it was on exactly, but it was one that made me like nod in my seat a little bit there. Still don't love the 43 minutes. And again, this circles back to my McCain criticism here. I just got to think a bit more long-term with him. Would like to preserve his body a bit more than is being the case, but nonetheless can't argue with the production. And I will also note, Jamal Shead probably played the best defense that I've seen on Tyrese Maxey all year. He was in his pants from start to finish, whether Maxey had the ball or not, just following him around completely all over the floor. And Maxey still finishing with 31. So pretty impressive stuff from the guy here. Again, Jamal Shead, hat tip to you. That was excellent defense from pretty much start to finish last night. VJ Edgecombe, a quiet game by his sky-high standards to this point, but still played 36 minutes, 11 points, had 7 rebounds and 4 assists, also 3 steals there, shot 5 of 15 from the field. And the thing that I want to point out most positive about VJ Edgecombe last night is he struggled for the larger part of that game. But when push came to shove, when it got into the crunch time minutes of that matchup, he still had the guts and the ability to execute that. I'm just taking a guy off a dribble in a half court, getting in the mid-range, and knocking down a shot. He did that twice when that game got a little bit close in the tail end of things. And it was up for the grabs with around 4 minutes left to play. And Edgecombe was willing and able to step foot into the spotlight as a rookie, knock down some big shots there. Now, to rattle off the rest of it, only 5 minutes for Jabari Walker last night, which did surprise me a little bit. Andre Drummond, a resurgence in winning the backup big man minutes, and swung the game again yesterday. That across his 16 minutes of play, he had 8 rebounds, 3 of those coming on the offensive end. He is one of the worst finishers around the rim I've ever seen, but he gets a ton of those opportunities. It's like he's playing volleyball with himself at the rim sometimes, but just his physical presence, how physically commanding he is around the rim, does matter to the Sixers team, and I do think that he played an impact in swinging the game last night. And Quentin Grimes, 13 points. He had 2 rebounds, 2 assists there, shot 4 of 8 from the field. Would like a bit more of a loud Quentin Grimes performance of him being more involved. I think that there's a little bit of an element of him turning into too much of just a spot-up shooter on the Sixers team when there's more to his his game than just that. But I also think last night was just not a game that played to his favor from a matchup standpoint for the Raptors. So we'll table that discussion. And the last point that I will make here regarding Joel Embiid specifically, I thought last night was by far the best he moved once again. It is amazing that the takeaways continue to be this level scaling up. I mean, he was running the floor last night on the fast break. That I thought, like, if you did not know the injury history, the knee issues that he had dealt with over the past 2 seasons, you would think this was Joel Embiid from 2 seasons ago last night. And that is the first time I felt like that all last year. He moved as well as he has all season and better than I think he did at any point last year on the floor. And just acknowledge what his stats are shaping up to be. It is still on the minutes limit at 23.3 minutes per game, but his production sitting at 19.7 points, 5.5 rebounds, 3.3 assists, 1.5 blocks per game, as defensively there's a bit more presence than was the case for the start of this season here. Field goal percentage still climbing in the right direction, but the defensive takeaways and the mobility should be by far the story here. And having a guy like Trendon Watford who can help out in that rebounding category, who can make up for some of those physical limitations that Embiid is typically tasked with on his shoulders there, is a huge deal for the Sixers team. So a massive win for the Sixers again last night, moving to 6-3 on the season, and not only massive in the win and loss column, but massive in the takeaways department. That there are going to be some really tough decisions by Nick Nurse for what is the best way to maximize this starting five. And I will just note in his post-game presser that Nurse mentioned the way that they came to this conclusion for giving Watford the start is he posted 4 different lineup options on the board with the assistant coaches. They voted on it, and that was what they came to. Was it was time to give Trenton Watford the starting power forward nod. Have a feeling he may not be leaving that spot for quite some time. But having too much talent is a great problem to have for the Sixers team, and far better than we've dealt with in several seasons. So shout out to Trenton Watford for making these decisions difficult. Shout out to the Sixers for continuing to keep their foot on the gas and looking strong out of the gates this year. Still a lot more basketball to be played, a lot more takeaways to be had, but pretty thrilled with how this team is starting so far this season. Let me know what you guys think about the Watford performance last night. What is your dream lineup for this Sixers team? I don't know how you take Watford out. I don't know how you take Oubre out. I'm beginning to wonder if this Paul George ramp-up could involve him coming off the bench to start. I know what the max contract says. I know who he's been throughout his career, but I do wonder if there is a way to soft launch that to an extent. We'll see what overall shakes out. To be determined what Nick Nurse selects to land on there. But again, great problems to have for the Sixers team. And they are 6-3 to start the season. So appreciate you guys for tuning in this video here. If you have not already, make sure you're hitting that subscribe button on the channel. Dropping a like on this video below. Giving your thoughts in the comments. And I'll be back talking with you next time right here on Sixers Digest. Peace.